Hi and welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom. This is a horror movie review and I'll be having a look at the movie Mama. So Mama is a ghost story ultimately, and we see in a prologue that there's a father who, it sounds like he just killed someone at his work and his wife, and in a sort of panic really just drives his two young girls out into the wilderness, and sort of where he's stressed out has a crash and ends up sort of stumbling across this old abandoned shack. Now he's kind of at the end of his rope and what have you. So I think he's looking to do like a sort of family suicide thing, and he's just about to pull the trigger on his young daughter, who I think they say is around 2, and she's got another daughter who's 1, when he's attacked by a kind of mysterious force. Cut to 5 years later, and you've got his twin brother who's sort of trying to track down any sort of signs of the brother and the sort of 2 girls, and finally he's employed these kind of like private detectives, I suppose, and they sort of stumble across this shack, and they find these 2 girls, and they're very sort of feral and quite spooky themselves in the way they sort of scuttle across the floor, I have to say. Anyway, so hence you got a kind of this sort of custody hearing where he and his girlfriend, played by Jessica Chastain, who is this kind of like punk rock, completely non-maternal sort of woman, and this I think the sister of the wife that was killed by the brother in the prologue. Anyway, so the brother, played by the guy who plays Jaime Lannister in Game of Thrones, I can't pronounce the guy's name, Nicholas Windleo or something like that. Anyway, you know who I mean. And he gets custody on the proviso that he's basically allowing this kind of like child psychologist access, and they're going to sort of move into this house where they sort of use it for case studies and such. And then we find that slowly but surely this entity that's been kind of looking after these kids all these sort of 5 years is actually this sort of ghost they refer to as Mama. And it's, you know, we kind of get a few glimpses of backstory about, you know, where she's come from and such, and who she is. It turns out she's kind of you know, an ex sort of mental patient who had her child taken away from her, and was killed sort of when she tried to sort of re-kidnap it and then run away from these you know, villages or whatever in the past. Anyway, and basically throughout the film, it's obviously that a lot of people, not until really, I suppose, the last third, they actually realise that there's a kind of a ghost. Some people are starting to suspect the Doctor kind of is the first really to sort of suspect something sort of not right here, and they'll have ultimately the finale where they realise, well, it's a ghost, and ultimately try and sort of claim the children. I mean, the ghost's motivation is that because she's kind of has this sort of maternal thing where she was trying to sort of kidnap her own sort of child when she was still alive. She has this kind of maternal instinct for these 2 young girls, and she's almost jealous when sort of the guy and the Jessica Chastain's character Annabel basically try and sort of almost parent them ultimately. Well, I have to say the children actors I think are really good. The 2 young girls, I thought they were very, very good, very convincing, especially the younger one, who's kind of more of the wild child. I mean, at the beginning of the film they're both very feral, and as the film sort of progresses, they kind of get a little bit more sort of civilized. The older one more so. The younger one is still very, very much kind of disturbed ultimately, because obviously she hasn't, where she was so young when it originally happened, she's only ever known Mama in the sort of like the wilderness and stuff like that. So she's almost further gone than the older one, who is basically acclimatizing a little bit more, but still sort of still has that sort of connection to obviously Mama in the sort of wilderness and whatnot. So you've probably seen some reviews from this film, and I have to say I probably agree with the majority of what's said here. I actually think it's a pretty solid ghost movie. There are some sort of jump scares, yes, and the main criticism, and I have to echo what has been said previously, is before the sort of first half of this film, when you kind of see flashes and Mama in the distance and things like that, it's very, very effective. But in the kind of the last third of this film, where you kind of see like a full-on CGI ghost monster, it kind of loses something, I think, because it kind of just looks like special effects you're looking at. You know, you're not. I don't think you're invested in Mama as an actual entity. You're just kind of looking at as sort of flashy special effects. And unfortunately, they've gone for the sort of full CGI sort of look, apart from when you see her hands and close-ups and things like that. But I think they maybe should have, if they wanted to do it CGI, kept it to a bit more minimum, kept it off screen, or maybe invested in a few more practical effects. I'm not a massive fan of the actual design of Mama as well. She's kind of like tall, spindly, and kind of like almost twig-like. But I don't know. I didn't think when you see her kind of face close up, it looks a lot less scary than you think it's going to, I have to say. And like I said, it's far more effective in the sort of first half of this film, where you just sort of see scuttling around it and her sort of shrouded by darkness. I think she looks a little bit too cartoony for my tastes when you sort of see the full on you know, Mama in all her glory. It's not bad, but you know, the actual effects I think could have been changed to make it a bit more of an effective film. Doesn't take away from the fact that it is actually quite a spooky horror film, and I think the acting is pretty uniformly good all along the board. I think just Chastain does a great job. I will say, I mean, I'm not going to spoil the ending. But the ending has a kind of doesn't go quite the way you think it's going to go. I will say that. I'm not quite sure what I thought about it. I suppose that it's, you know, relatively original. Not exactly a twist as such, but it doesn't go quite the way you may think it will go. I will say I maybe didn't quite understand Mama the Ghost's motivations. Now, this is going to be a bit spoilery, unfortunately, from this point on. So pretty much throughout this film, she's kind of obviously wanting to sort of mother these two girls and kind of play with them and do stuff with them. But towards the end, she's kind of dive them off this cliff and sort of kill them, I suppose. And I didn't see where in, because they're making that the assumption then that Mama is this kind of, she can make rational decisions and she kind of chooses this is what she wants to do. But while she's portrayed as much more of a kind of almost a force of nature on screen, I don't think, rather than a sort of sentient being who can communicate all that well, I don't think. But she kind of makes this decision when I guess that the sort of their kids' real family are closing in to sort of almost to try and take their lives. And to me, I don't know, it just seemed a bit weird that she had obviously at some point made that decision. And I thought, well, why didn't she do that all along if that's what she ultimately wanted to do, was kind of have these kids with their own ghostly form, I suppose, or something. It just seemed to me that she was kind of protecting these kids for so much, and then kind of at the end she kind of wanted to not nastily kill them and such, but she wanted to have them for eternity, I suppose, and kill them. But there must have been a point, you know, where she had decided to do that. And I don't know if that's just me, or maybe I missed something, I don't know, but I kind of was a bit, oh, you know, well, she must have decided to do that. Anyway, that's probably a little bit nitpicky, to be fair. Overall, I really enjoyed this film. It was a spooky atmosphere. It's quite a lot of jump scares. It was well acted. It was well directed. So, you know, can't really say too many bad things apart from that sort of maybe one issue, and maybe the sort of CGI effects being not quite as effective as they could have been. But overall, pretty damn decent. I'm going to give this one a 7.5 out of 10. Have you seen it? Let me know what you think and leave me a comment. See you later.